Hello everyone, I am Dr. Muskan from Team MDS Conquer. In our previous video, we discussed about the psychodynamic theories of child psychology. Now in this video, I'll be discussing about the behavioral theories. This part is more theory oriented and what questions you can get from these are like you can get about the scientist, the name of the scientist who put forward the theory, the year in which it was put forward, and unlike the psychodynamic theories, there are no stages related to the age group. Uh, Rather, there are some key elements or the principles or the phenomena related with each theory, and plus the experiments performed by the scientists related to explain the each theory. So you need just to remember those names, and you need not go into much detail. You just need to know the terms and what just the basic of what that means and the scientists and the years. So, the behavioral approach emphasizes the role of experience in modifying behavior. The main behavioral theories are classical conditioning theory by Ivan Pavlov, operant conditioning theory by B.F. Skinner, social learning theory by Bandura. So, classical conditioning theory or the respondent conditioning theory, it was given by Ivan Pavlov in 1928, and it was the first type of the learning theory to be discovered. So the basic terminology of classical conditioning, first let's see about the terminology, then I'll be citing an example and explaining you about each of the following terms. So first is the conditioned stimulus. It is the any stimulus that will always and naturally elicit a response. Unconditioned stimulus, any response that always and naturally occurs at the presentation of the unconditioned stimulus. Neutral stimulus, any stimulus that does not naturally elicit a response associated with the unconditioned response. So next is the conditioned stimulus, any stimulus that will, after association with the unconditioned stimulus, cause a conditioned response when presented to a subject by itself. Next is the conditioned response, any response that occurs when the presentation of the conditioned stimulus. So, to explain this theory, Pavlov performed an experiment with the help of a dog. He presented food to the dog, and then he measured the amount of saliva produced by the dog on presentation of the food and the other neutral stimulus and the conditioned stimulus. Now let's understand the terms which we have just read about. First is before conditioning. Now whenever food will be given to a dog in a natural scenario, the response will be salivation. These are the involuntary actions. So this is the unconditioned stimulus, this is the unconditioned response. This is the natural thing that is happening. Now again, naturally taking, if we ring a bell or we present with a tuning fork to a dog, he will normally will not salivate. So tuning fork or the bell will be a neutral stimulus, and there will be no conditioned response uh, in response to the tuning fork. So now during conditioning, what we do, he presented the bell or tuning fork along with the food, and that resulted in salivation. That was again unconditioned response. Why? Because food was still present. So over a period of time, when this presentation was reinforced again and again, the dog learned that whenever the bell rang or the tuning fork was presented, the dog started salivating. Why? Because of the thought of having food with the tuning fork. So tuning fork now becomes the conditioned stimulus, and salivation now becomes the conditioned response. So association between the conditioned stimulus and unconditioned stimulus is strengthened or reinforced every time they occur together. So, once a conditioned response has been established, it is necessary to reinforce it only occasionally to maintain it. So, next are the types of classical conditioning. Uh, as of now, we have not got any question regarding to these types, but still you should just know the terminology and one or two main points relating to these. Need not go into much detail of this, because in case you get a question, so you should be able to mark the right answer. So there are two types of conditioning: forward conditioning and backward conditioning. So what is the main difference between forward and backward conditioning? In forward conditioning, the onset of conditioned stimulus precedes the onset of the unconditioned stimulus, whereas in backward conditioning, conditioned stimulus follows the unconditioned stimulus. So this is the difference, and with forward learning, it is the fastest way in conditioning. And forward conditioning, it is of two types: delayed conditioning and trace conditioning. So next is the association. So basically, association, it is the most important part of classical conditioning. Pavlov considered classical conditioning to be a form of learning through association in time of a neutral stimulus and a stimulus that incites a response. Now, the dog associated the ringing of a bell and presentation of a food. So, the ringing of a bell became the conditioned stimulus and salivation became the conditioned response. Any stimulus can be paired with another to make an association if it is done in the correct way. So next are the principles of classical conditioning. So there are four main principles of classical conditioning. You need to remember the names of all these principles and just the basics of what they mean. First is the acquisition, extinction, generalization, and discrimination. So acquisition, it is the initial learning of the conditioned response. Basically, it is the establishment of the response in the simple words. Next is extinction of the conditioned behavior. It is the elimination of the conditioned response by repeatedly presenting the conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus. Next is generalization. After an individual has learned a conditioned response to one stimulus, it may also respond to the similar stimuli without further training, and less similar stimuli will usually produce less generalization. So, to understand generalization, let's take an example that a child visits a pediatrician for his normal vaccination routine. Now, when the child visits pediatrician, he gets vaccinated. So the pain of the injection is the unconditioned stimulus, and in response to that, the child is fearful and cries. That is the unconditioned response. At the same time, since the doctor is wearing the white coat, that becomes a neutral stimulus. So now the next time a child visits the dentist, so he sees the dentist wearing the white coat, and he associates this white coat with the memory of his pain of the injection. So now the white coat becomes conditioned stimulus and he starts crying and is fearful. That is the conditioned response. Although there is no injection being given to the patient, but the child associates that I have come to a doctor, now this doctor will give me injection, and he will associate the two things and will be fearful and will start crying. Now, what is generalization? So association of pain, white coat, general atmosphere of office tends to become generalized. Although pediatrician's office and a dentist office, they are different, but the child does not know. He just knows that both the doctors are wearing white coat, so he will feel pain in both the operatories. So behavior management in the dentist office is easier if the dental office looks as little like the typical pediatrician's office or hospital clinic as possible. Another thing what we can do is not to wear the white coat, because to extinguish that white coat anxiety, and you can wear the mask with the cartoons, or the doctor can wear the scrub with the cartoon figures on that. So it also helps if makes the child first visit as different as possible from the previous visits to the physician's treatment, and pain should be avoided if at all possible on the first visit to the dental office. Next is discrimination. Now what is discrimination? It is just opposite to generalization. So an individual learns to produce a conditioned response to one stimulus but not to another stimulus that is similar. For example, a child may show a fear response to freely roaming dogs, but may not show any fear when a dog is on a leash or is confined to a pen. So this was all about the classical conditioning theory. What you need to know, given by Ivan Pavlov. Then he performed the his Bell experiment, and the four principles and the association phenomena. So need not go into much detail of everything. You just need to know the basic names of all the phenomena, basic names of all the terms, and the experiment he performed. So the next is the operant conditioning theory. It was given by B.F. Skinner. So it is basically the extension of the classical conditioning theory. Now, to understand operant conditioning theory in simple words, it means learning by the consequences. So what operant said, what Skinner said, that there are voluntary actions. So he named the voluntary actions as operant. So to every voluntary action there are consequences. So these consequences further act as stimuli which shapes our behavior. So Skinner maintained that learning occurred as a result of the organism responding to or operating on its environment, and coined the term operant conditioning to describe this phenomena. So Skinner also performed an experiment on animals like rats and pigeons, and it was also known as Skinner box or the operant box, in which a rat learns to press a lever in order to obtain a food. So this is some kind of operant box, and the Skinner box illustration of the operant illustration of the Skinner's experiment. So there are three main principles of operant conditioning theory. First is that behaviors, they are voluntary and not part of a reflexive response, as said by the Pavlov in classical conditioning theory. Consequences of behavior is in itself a stimulus that can affect the future behavior, and we can teach new behaviors that the subject does not express. In short, what I had mentioned in the earlier slide, that we perform voluntary actions that leads to a consequences, and those consequences further they act as stimulus and they affect our future behavior. Now there are two key concepts in operant conditioning. You just need to understand these. One is reinforcement, another is punishment. Now reinforcement is to increase the frequency of the particular behavior. Punishment is to decrease the frequency of a particular behavior. Okay, now the next thing is that they could be positive or negative. Now in some simple mathematical terms, positive means plus, to add something, negative means minus, to remove something. Now, putting together positive reinforcement, that means we are adding something to increase the frequency of a particular behavior. For example, favorable events or outcomes that are presented after the behavior. For example, let's take an easy example. Now, a child has to a child has to go for an exam. He has to study. Now the parent says that you will get a reward if you score good marks. For example, reward could be any toy or money or anything like that. So the child studies, the child gets good marks, the child gets reward, or the child gets that particular toy, and again the child studies much more harder than earlier for the reward. That is the positive reinforcement. That is, something is being added, a reward is being given to reinforce the positive behavior, that is getting good marks. Next is the negative reinforcement, removal of an unfavorable events or outcomes after the display of a behavior. Now what the child does, now child knows that if I don't score good marks, the parents will scold the child. Now scolding the child will be a something which is unfavorable, that the child does not like. Now what the child will be doing, child will be studying to eliminate that negative behavior. So he is removing that negative behavior so that to prevent the unfavorable events. So he will study hard. Next is punishment. Now we want to decrease the frequency of the behavior. Again, positive punishment, it involves the presentation of an unfavorable event in order to weaken the response. Now for example, let's take an example. Again, positive means something is added to decrease the frequency of the behavior in punishment. So let's take an example. An employee is always late for the office. Now what the employer will do, the employer will either increase the work of the employee, or will ask the employee to do work with those people he does not want to. Like, he is adding something, that as a punishment he is adding something to his routine which he is not liking. So in order to avoid doing more work or more hours of work, or doing work with the people he does not want, he will stop coming late to the office. So the frequency of the negative behavior, it is decreased. Something added, what is added, more work is added to that employee. Now the next is negative punishment. Again, negative is something is removed to decrease the frequency of the behavior. Now favorable event or outcome is removed after a behavior occurs. Again, if the employee is coming late, what the employer will do, he will cut his salary or he will cut his perks. So something is removed to decrease the frequency of his negative behavior, that is his habit of coming late to the office. So he will start coming at time. Now what are the differences between classical conditioning and operant conditioning theories? In classical conditioning, response is involuntary or automatic. In operant conditioning, the response is voluntary, it operates on the environment. Regarding acquisition, associating events, that is conditioned stimulus announces the unconditioned stimulus. In operant conditioning, associating response with a consequence with the help of a reinforcer or a punisher. In regard to extinction, in classical conditioning, conditioned response, it decreases when conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented alone. In operant conditioning, decreases when reinforcement stops. In biological predisposition, natural predispositions contain what stimuli and responses can easily be associated, whereas in operant conditioning, organisms best learn behaviors similar to their natural behaviors. So next is in dental setting. Now, how can we use positive reinforcement? A child is given a reward such as a toy for behaving well during the first dental visit. So positive is the child behaved well in the first dental visit, that is his consequence of his volunteer action. So to reinforce that, to increase the frequency of this behavior, he is given a reward, that is something is added, so that in the next visit he will behave in a much more better way than this visit. So now is negative reinforcement. A child who views a visit to the hospital clinic as an unpleasant experience may throw a temper tantrum at the prospect of having to go there. If this behavior succeeds in allowing the child to escape the visit to the clinic, the behavior has been negatively reinforced. In the same way, in the dentist office, if behavior considered unacceptable by the dentist succeeds in allowing the child to escape from dental treatment, that behavior has been negatively reinforced. So what are the clinical significances? Basically, you can relate these behavior theories with the behavior management techniques. We'll be studying behavior management techniques also. In that also we'll be discussing many of these terms. Again, their reinforcement, punishment, and we'll be discussing these things. So now is punishment. Punishment may be in the form of voice control or hand over mouth technique. So now punishment, it may eliminate desirable behaviors along with undesirable ones and lead to a classically conditioned fear response. Omission, if a child who throws a temper tantrum has his favorite toy taken away for a short time as a consequence of his behavior, the probability of similar misbehavior is decreased. So this is negative punishment. Next is the clinical significance. In general, positive and negative reinforcement, they are most suitable types of operant conditioning for use in the dental office, particularly for motivating orthodontic patients. Simply praising a child for desirable behavior produces positive reinforcement, and additional positive reinforcement can be achieved by presenting some tangible reward like a toy. And even in case of adolescents, like for the orthodontic patients, just praising them for their cooperation and they are wearing their retainers in time and they are responding well with their treatment. So praising them is also a sort of positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement, it is more difficult to utilize as a behavior management tool in dental office, but it can be used effectively if the circumstances permit. For example, if a child is concerned about the treatment procedure but behaves well and understands that the procedure has been shortened because of his good behavior, the desired behavior has been negatively reinforced, because we are subtracting something. Minus, time is being minused. Why? The child was behaving in a good manner. So this is the example of negative reinforcement. So this ends our operant conditioning theory. So what we need to know, the first is that it was given by Skinner, then it is learning by consequences. Next is that he performed a experiment on rat in Skinner box or operant box. And what is operant? It is the voluntary actions which produces a consequences. Next, we need to know that there are two key elements, reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement may be positive and negative, and punishment may be positive or negative. Reinforcement is increasing the frequency of a behavior, punishment is decreasing the frequency of a behavior. Positive is by adding something, negative is by removing something. So next is the social learning theory. You need not go in detail of this theory. So this theory, it was given by Bandura. So this theory states that people learn new behavior through observation, learning of the social factors in their environment. If people observe positive desired outcomes in the observed behavior, then they are more likely to model or imitate and adopt the behavior themselves. So the main elements are self-efficacy, performance accomplishment, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and emotional arousal. More of the social learning theory, we will be dealing with it in the behavior management part, in the modeling and live modeling and all those techniques. So for example, to cite an example, filmed on in vivo modeling, it requires the child to watch another person or model either on film or in real life going through a dental treatment. So during a session of modeling, a child would watch the model move through steps of the dental appointment, demonstrating two key components of social learning theory, that is vicarious learning and performance accomplishment. So the child would learn the coping skills and adapt the skills to their own behaviors during dental treatment. This would teach the child alternatives to cope with their anxiety other than refusal or tantrums. So, what is participant modeling? It involves active participation from the observer. The child is asked to practice or engage in the skills the model is demonstrating during the modeling. So, one more question which you may get related to this is that the modeling, which is a method of behavior management, is based on the social learning theory given by Bandura. So this ends with the theories. One more theory, it is recently added in the latest edition of Shobha Tandon. This was given by Bronfenbrenner, and it is known as ecological systems theory. It divides the environment into four systems, that is microsystem, mesosystem, exosystem, and the macrosystem. So he states that the behavior of a child, it is dependent upon the that the behavior of the child depends upon first on the microsystem, that is the his immediate surroundings, that is the child, his adults, his peers, his home, school. Then comes the mesosystem, which includes the home, school, and the neighborhood. Then comes the exosystems and the microsystems. So the basic behavior, it depends upon the interaction of all the systems, and basically this theory is based on the environmental factors. So you just need to know the name of the theory, then the name of the scientist, and the basic four systems which were given. So with this we end with the theories. Now you may go through both the videos, and then we can have a doubts discussion session. So all the best, stay motivated. Thank you.